This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's a little overcast out, but it's kind of nice, I suppose. It's not too hot, not too cold. And best wishes to those of you out there dealing with storm after effects. Your ridiculous lunatic over on the Discord was showing us pictures of the fallout on the roads of landslides and such, and I hope everybody's doing well and your families are safe. But yeah, so we are at another Sunday. It's been a momentous week for me. It was my 8th YouTube anniversary on Friday. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff coming up this week. I think, in fact, I'm on at least a stream over the next 2 days each day. I'm going to be ending up on Latino Slant with Polly. Be on his show tomorrow night, Monday night, and then Tuesday I should be on Midnight's Edge After Dark. Boy, oh boy, I'm just all over the place today, or this week. And I got other things going on too in real life, so it's a busy week coming up. I know you're very interested in that, but just thought I'd say. But otherwise, before we get into the news, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about, who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning? Noah, Alex, Asensio, Alexander Asensio. Good morning. Old Guy Gamer, good morning to you. Keeverdam, good morning. And thank you, Keeverdam, for providing the link to the donation page of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. If you guys can take a look at that and donate if you are able, and even if you're not, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. So thank you for that, and thank you, Keeverdam, for providing that as always. Somnamnial Nation, good morning. Mike R., good morning. TF good morning. John Trioxin, good morning. Who else is here? Scrolling. Tier Alexander, the Scourge, good morning. Sabian187, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. Dragon Mage, good morning to you. Roasted Opinions, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. The Best Remy, good morning. Shady Grin, good morning. Ryan R., good morning to you. Mike Savage, Blarg. Kiro Soldier, good morning. Simon Willikins, good morning to you. Who else is here? Anybody else? I don't see anybody new, but if I see anybody else, I'll try to make a hello. Otherwise, anybody here or lurking or in the future, good morning. Dragon Mage says, whoops, it's my afternoon. Well, I apologize. And Faye Alex, good morning. All right, so I got several stories to go over today. Lots of different things going on in politics and otherwise, but focusing specifically in on, I guess, we'll be talking about Tim Walz and his comments. We'll be talking about Ta-Nehisi Coates not being treated like royalty, and suddenly that's a big story. And as well, associated with CBS, 60 Minutes in some hot water, I suppose, ethically, journalistically, or otherwise. But first, I saw this story yesterday. And the thing is, I've been seeing stories kind of like this over the last few days. Just little stories, nothing big, no headliners or anything, but just these little stories as we quickly approach the election that are talking about and emphasizing the fact that Kamala Harris has some major issues with her campaign. I know, it's a crazy idea. But there's these little stories that almost feel like, I don't know, proto-buyer's remorse after a fashion, except nobody really bought Kamala Harris because she just was kind of anointed into the position of being nominee, so I don't know. It's like sort of lowering expectations or just kind of bewildered that they couldn't be more enthusiastic about her candidacy. I'm not sure why people are surprised by this, given the fact that she was one of the worst performing candidates for president back in 2020. Why they thought she'd suddenly be a wunderkind now is beyond me, but anyway. The AP yesterday, and this might be way of a different publication, sometimes the AP reposts stuff, lingers on a question that has been very important over the last, at least couple of weeks. A couple of weeks in which Kamala Harris finally decided to talk to the press in some way that wasn't just completely staged. Harris faces new urgency. New urgency. All of a sudden, right now, to explain how her potential presidency would be different from Biden's. Well, I haven't read this article yet, but here's the problem that she's already set up for herself. She was asked, quite pointedly, on The View the other day, that she was, and I'm paraphrasing, but she was asked, is there anything about the Biden presidency that she would have done differently? And she said she couldn't think of a thing. Now, that is an answer that I cannot believe from any thinking adult person. There is nothing, on reflection, over the course of the last 3.5, nigh on 4 years of the presidential administration of Joe Biden, that if Kamala Harris had been in charge, she would have done differently, especially with the benefit of hindsight. Nothing? Nothing. That is not a serious answer from a serious person. And the other thing, too, if you'll notice, there's this weird dynamic where even Barack Obama, who was making a speech the other day, was referring to Donald Trump as though he were the incumbent. As though we need to turn the page on another 4 years of XYZ PDQ. I'm like, no, it's Kamala Harris represents the last 4 years, not a different 4 years, the previous 4 years. So yes, how does she explain how her presidency would be different? But then again, if you're voting for Kamala Harris, don't you like what was going on in the Biden presidency? This is a very confusing time. Let's see what the AP has to say. With less than 4 weeks until Election Day, Vice President Kamala Harris is facing new urgency to define how her potential presidency would be different from that of President Joe Biden. My first question would be, why does it need to be different? See, here's the thing that we're not talking about. We're not talking about the failings of the Joe Biden presidency. If you want Kamala Harris's presidency to be different, you have to concede that there were things you weren't happy with in the previous 4 years. But we can't seem to cross that line. Her struggle to present herself both as a candidate of change, right, while demonstrating a loyalty to the politicians she serves under, was made clear Tuesday when she was asked on ABC's The View how she would lead differently than Biden. Harris said, quote, "We're obviously two different people," unquote. And I have to quote-unquote this all the time because the selective editing of Kamala Harris's comments, as well as Donald Trump's comments by the media in this particular time we live in, is very important to point out. Because the negative spaces in between quotations could leave room for something that is more relevant. Well, we'll talk more about that when we get to the 60 Minutes interview. We're obviously two different people. And, quote, "I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead," unquote. What sensibilities? What? What does that mean? Everyone is different from the person next to them. That doesn't say anything about what you will do as a leader. But when pressed to identify a decision made by Biden that she would have taken another way, she demurred. Quote, "There is not a thing that comes to mind," unquote, she said. Not a thing. Nothing about the economy, nothing about Afghanistan, nothing about the border, nothing diplomatically or internationally, nothing at all. She followed up later in the show by saying she would put a Republican in her cabinet. Well, whoop-de-doo. That's what you would do differently? Okay. 2.5 months into her unexpected candidacy, Harris has so far largely relied on her age and biography to signal a break from the 81-year-old Biden and her 78-year-old Republican opponent, former President Donald Trump. Now, in a tight race against Trump, she is being forced to reassess how she talks about her boss and how she might strike out on her own should she win the White House. Something that people really need to think about. And this is on both sides of the aisle, because here's the thing, she may indeed become the President of the United States. But certainly people are thinking about voting for Kamala Harris. This is not her first rodeo, okay? She was running for president back in 2019. Presumably, she had some ideas for what she would want to do as president. Presumably, she had defined for herself what her vision was as a potential presidential candidate. And in the time since that she's been vice president, you have to imagine she's been thinking about this as well. Because whether Biden had dropped out this year or after 4 more years or whatever, she was going to make a run at the presidency again. It's really difficult not to when you become vice president. Not every vice president does, but a lot do. And she certainly had ambitions to do so. So why is it so difficult for her now, after all these years and a previous presidential campaign, to strike out on her own and give her own unique or at least personal perspective on what it means and what she wants to do as president? It's so bizarre. I get having to walk a fine line between, speaking for yourself independently while not completely alienating, the hand that feeds you, so to speak, from the Democratic Party and Joe Biden in particular. But at this point, really, go your own way, as the Eagles told us. Just do it. Because either you're going to win or you're going to lose at this point. And really, if you lose, oh no, Joe Biden won't be happy with you for another 3 months. So what? I don't understand why she's not doing something or saying something unique. Unless she never had any unique ideas to begin with. I don't know. It's just absolutely bizarre to me. Just from a political angle. I just don't get it. Thank you, Kiro Soldier. You're assuming she has the capacity to do so. Well, it's true. Like I say, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt. This is somebody who put her hat in the ring back in 2019, 2020, and said that she was ready to become president of the United States. Okay? Now, the delusions of grandeur? Possibly so. But all the same, she had ideas back then, and sure, things changed a bit since then. We've had a pandemic, we've had a whole bunch of other stuff, but the core of her beliefs, the core of her vision, could easily be modified or moderated between that time to now to start messaging out, but she just isn't. And so, yeah, Biden did nothing wrong, is her message. If Biden did nothing wrong, then you are not the change candidate. Sorry, Fleetwood Mac, not the Eagles, pardon me. Fleetwood Mac. I got that wrong. It's morning. My brain's still waking up someday, But if Biden did nothing wrong, you cannot be the candidate of change. If you're the vice president to the active president, and you say the president did nothing wrong, then you've got nothing to offer. Presumably, you'll just be copying him, or you're not telling us what you're going to do, and you're just saying what you need to say to keep people happy. Which isn't a good look for a president who's supposed to be seen as someone who will take the country in a new direction, given the fact that people are fairly unhappy right now. The first black and South Asian woman to be a major party presidential nominee. Was she really a nominee, though? I mean, I guess technically by the word, but she just was put into the spot. Harris was 9 years old when Biden was elected to the Senate and was in law school when Trump, then a real estate heir and socialite, published The Art of the Deal. Harris, her campaign believes, embodies change, yet she still may need to find a better way to talk about it. May? Not May. Not May. According to aides, Harris is deeply loyal to Biden and resistant to publicly doing anything that could be construed as criticizing his presidency, though his favorability ratings remain underwater. In private, some question what she should break with Biden on, noting the popularity of some of the biggest pieces of his legislative agenda, from infrastructure to lowering the costs of some prescription drugs. You mean insulin? It's mainly insulin, right? And the recklessness of signaling any daylight with the presidency on foreign policy at a time of global crises. Harris was a central partner to Biden throughout. So we are told. Except that in many other stories I've read over the last couple of years, there seemed to be quite a rift of distance between the vice president's office and the West Wing. But, okay. And they worry a break now could be viewed as pre-election opportunism. Everything she's doing is pre-election opportunism. Not having a vote and her just being put into place is opportunism. Her not saying a word to the press for 2 months. Views of Biden are still more negative than positive, even after he withdrew as the Democratic nominee in July. About 4 in 10 Americans had a somewhat or favorable view of Biden in an AP NORC poll conducted in September, and 55% had an unfavorable view, which is consistent with where his favorability ratings have stood for the past 2 years. Feelings toward Harris, meanwhile, were warmer. Half of Americans had a favorable opinion of her, okay, while 44% had an unfavorable opinion. Well, I mean, if you say half Americans had a favorable opinion, okay, so it's a 50-50 split, more or less. Okay. In addition to her pledge to put a Republican in her cabinet, that's you want to talk about tokenism? I don't know what to tell you. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, but if you just told me that, candidate X from Party Y was going to put a member of Party Z into her cabinet. And? Okay. Harris has introduced some policies distinct from Biden, including calling for a smaller hike to the capital gains tax than advocated for by the president. Okay. But they have been modest, and Biden's White House, in turn, has quickly signed onto her positions. Uh-huh. And so a demonstrably unpopular president is doing everything he can to support his vice president, even if it contradicts his own policy declarations previously. It sounds like desperation. Sounds like loyalty, perhaps. Maybe just party loyalty. Trump seized on her comments that she couldn't think of any decision by Biden that she would change, playing a clip of The View appearance at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania on Wednesday to roars from the crowd. Quote, go away, AP. Quote, her answer that she would do nothing different is disqualifying, he said in reading. Well, it's disqualifying her as a change candidate, if that's how they're trying to frame her, that's for sure. Some Harris allies have pressed her to more forcefully signal a break from Biden. Quote, she should do what's best, unquote, former Harris Communications Director Jamal Simmons said. Quote, winning will make Joe Biden feel a lot better than anything else, unquote. Well, my major concern when it comes to a presidential election is the feelings of the current president in office. Come on, guys, let's make Joe Biden feel good. Biden is, quote, an unpopular president in a global anti-incumbent mood, unquote, added Democratic strategist Alyssa Cass, adding that the small universe of undecided voters is particularly not enthralled by Biden. Harris, she said, needs to, quote, communicate clearly to voters something she would have done differently that is acknowledging some of the dissatisfaction that they have, rightly or wrongly, as a way to move them to be more fully comfortable with her, unquote. She's correct. If she's just saying effectively, Biden did nothing wrong and I'm going to be an extension of his presidency, then you're carrying on all of his baggage. You need to show that you have an independent mind. That you do acknowledge that there were some weaknesses. This is the thing that she's going to have to do. It's probably already too late. But what she would have to have done already is to say, on reflection, we should have done this with this issue and that with that issue, and I've learned a lot under Joe Biden, and I'm going to improve things, something like that. Otherwise, you just look like an idiot. If you can't, what do we do in life as thinking grown-up adults, or just humans in general, right? You learn from your mistakes. And a person that I have more respect for is someone who acknowledges their mistakes and then talks about either how they will fix them for the future or learn from their mistake and didn't make it again when they were challenged again later on in life. So, if Kamala Harris is telling us that she is incapable or unable or unwilling to learn from the mistakes of the past, whether they were her decisions or just decisions that she was involved with, I have to either take her at her word or believe that she is lying, right? Because there's no two ways about it if you're a thinking adult. The first vice president to mount a bid to replace a leader of their party in almost a quarter century, Harris is trying to strike a delicate balance. She's not trying to do much of anything as far as I can tell. Harris's team has tried to keep Biden at a distance on the campaign trail. Yeah, and I heard rumors about the reaction to Biden coming out surprisingly at the press corps meeting last week or whatever, and start talking about things. I guess the Harris campaign didn't know he was going to do that. The pair have held only a single campaign event together. Yet she has been pulled into appearing by his side to monitor hurricanes and address emergencies in the Middle East. Pulled into appear. She is the acting vice president of the United States. Okay, her as presidential candidate, as far as I'm concerned, is a secondary concern to her role as the elected vice president of the United States. Pulled into appear. Oh, like it's some big inconvenience. That's her job. This is what she signed on to. I'm neither supposed to. I do not feel sorry for her, nor am I impressed by her presence doing things that the vice president should be doing. She is the vice president. She's not just some independent candidate. Pulled into appearing. Oh, gosh. Oh, no. She's doing the job she's being paid to do by the American taxpayer. Oh, gosh. Harris's challenge is not unique, though the compressed nature of her campaign after Biden's exit is undoubtedly a complicating factor not faced in the modern era. Yeah. And who's to blame for that? Well, Biden and the Democrats. The Democrats should have pressured Biden not to run for a second term. Then they could have had something like primaries for a Democratic candidate, or given Kamala Harris more time to campaign as the replacement. Instead, they just heeled to him the entire time, when apparently they had enough leverage to get him out earlier. They just waited until after the debate where he could embarrass himself in the country publicly, but whatever. In 2000, the then Democratic nominee, Vice President Al Gore, maintained an arm's-length relationship with a scandal-tarred President Bill Clinton after he faced a high-profile impeachment inquiry over his affair with a White House intern and attempts to cover it up. And in 1988, President Ronald Reagan, then 78, did not campaign aggressively for his vice president and eventual successor, George H.W. Bush. Yes, they stayed away to give that person the opportunity to strike it out on their own. And so, in this case, yeah, Biden's letting Harris do her thing. Sure, but it's a little bit different because he dropped out in the middle of the presidential campaign. The dynamic's a little bit different than what happened with Al Gore or George H.W. Bush. Just a bit. Quote, "Vice presidents have always struggled with how to separate themselves from incumbent presidents," said Republican strategist Alex Conant. "It's why so few of them win." Yeah, and it's so bizarre to me. that where it's such a close race, it just shows that as ridiculous a candidate as Kamala is, Trump has done himself no favors. I read an article from Eugene Robinson the other week. This campaign should not be this close, and I thought to myself, you're right, it should not be this close, but yet here we are. Quote, "Her talking point that she's not Joe Biden is a good quip. It's the same quip she makes about Donald Trump, though. She's not Donald Trump. That she's not Joe Biden is a good quip. Is it really a good quip? But not a good message," Conant added, saying, quote, "She should be able to point to 3 things at the ready that she'd do differently." He's absolutely right, at least. Instead, he said Harris, quote, "delivered Trump's message better than Trump does himself," unquote. Not wrong there. Other Democrats see little reason for Harris to make explicit policy breaks from Biden. Her presence at the top of the ticket resolves what had been the biggest Democratic vulnerability in November: Biden's age. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Biden's age is certainly a factor, and has been a factor, well, basically since he was running. Kamala's inability to answer a question coherently is Biden levels of worrisome. Okay? And seeing how she reacted in the interview on CBS, in those questions that they actually aired the full context of as far as we know, where she was pressed even a little bit on especially the border policy or otherwise, seeing her anger rise to the surface, her flustering, I just, one of the scenarios I keep thinking about is if Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States, at some point, she's going to have no escape hatch. She's not going to have a teleprompter. She's not going to have somebody there talking in her ear, giving her all the answers all the time. She's going to have to make a decision, and under pressure. And so I try to imagine this person just in an interview being asked basic questions about her involvement or her governance over the last 3.5 years as vice president, sitting in the Oval Office when a crisis actually falls upon her shoulders and she has to make a decision. She has to make a decision against competing interests and the power of other world leaders. If she can't keep her cool in an interview about her own actions and history in office, what happens when it comes down to brass tacks and she has to make a serious decision? These are the things I think about. These are the things that worry me. Quote, "There's no question that the campaign understands the imperative for her to be an agent of change," unquote, said Eric Schultz, a Democratic operative and former Obama spokesperson. Agent of change. Now, boy, oh boy, is that a phrase that I've come to know very well, unfortunately, over the last 8 years. Quote, "That is why a new way forward is a smart frame, and it's also why she has made clear that her election would represent generational change." What does that mean? I'm a younger candidate than the current president? That doesn't mean anything. That is, of course, a contrast with her 78-year-old opponent, but it is also a signal that her entire orientation will be future and forward-looking. What does that mean? It's all abstracts. We go right back to, she should have 3 points ready to say what she'd do differently. What is she going to do, and how is she going to do it? On Twitter, it's basically become a running gag for me. I see a post from Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris's Twitter person, whoever that is, saying, "I'm going to do X." Right? We're going to give everybody $25,000 to buy a new home. And I'm like, okay, that is a goal. What is your plan? How will you pay for it? How will you convince Congress to go along with it? It's getting to be a broken record every time I see one of these things. I ask the same 2 questions. How will you pay for it? How will you get Congress to go along with it? I know I'm not going to get an answer because she has no answer. And that's not to say that she's unique amongst politicians making such promises, right? I mean, I remember a video I did on Bernie Sanders. I called it Burnt, B-E-R-N-T, Offerings. I think that was on the thumbnail, Burnt Offerings. And it was Bernie Sanders being interviewed. I think was it Now This or something? Anyway, he was being asked, has he been over-promising back when he was running for president? Over-promising on, reimbursed school debt and tax breaks and all this other stuff. And he kept going on and on about his goals. And I kept asking, yeah, but how are you going to make them happen? Goals are not plans. How are you going to get there? But in this case, the onus falls upon Kamala Harris. Because here's the thing. You might ask yourself, and some people have asked me, gosh, why don't you talk about Trump more? Why don't you talk about Trump more? I talked about Trump for 4 years. And the thing is, Trump is the known quantity here. With Trump, we already know what we're going to get. There's not much to talk about Trump. I've been more curious and fascinated by Kamala Harris over the last 3 years. I got a whole playlist on my channel about it. Because I was always thinking, this is the lady that's in line to take over if something happens with Biden. The elderly, obviously mentally not all there guy. If something happens, this is who's going to take over. And I'm really curious to know who this lady is and how she would lead. And sitting here 3.5 years, almost 4 years into this administration, I still don't know. I only have what's in front of me, what has been shown to me by her, and all I can see is absolute and utter bedlam. Go back to that article that I read, that novel-length article from CNN from 2021 that broke down all the shenanigans going on behind the scenes in the vice president's office. And that's my vision. That's my vision for what a Kamala Harris presidency would be. She's given me absolutely no reason to think it'd be different at this point, given her behavior and given the cadence of her candidacy or her campaign so far. Anyway, Roasted Opinions. Always run on at least 3 sustains and 3 improves. Allows reference to the past success while admitting that the job can be done better. Exactly. You have to concede something. You have to show that you have enough foresight and hindsight that mistakes were made, and this is how you're going to improve. It's human, and it's understandable, and it's relatable. And if you relay that to the American public, and you say, obviously, in this instance, things did not go the way that we wanted them to. And I paid very close attention, and I spoke with Joe a lot about this, and, we said that, well, if we had a second bite at the apple, we would have done it this way, and that's what I intended. Something like that. I mean, I could accept that. It wouldn't necessarily make me vote for her, but I'd feel a heck of a lot more comfortable with her becoming president if I heard something like that. Some kind of introspection. Something. But no, it's like, no, everything's fine. You get that dog sitting there drinking his tea while the world burns around him. No, everything's fine. Anyway, moving on to Kamala's running mate. You know how we've been told over and over and over again that we have to vote for the Democratic Party in order to preserve democracy? Well, Tim Walz apparently doesn't believe in the process that we have, that is not a democracy, but a constitutional republic. And also the idea that having a direct democracy in this country would be a terrible idea. But yeah, so let's talk about Tim Walz. Remember, practiced politician and possibly being the next in line to the presidency should something happen. Walz backs off comment that Electoral College should go. My position is the campaign's position, except it isn't. Except it isn't, because if it was, you never would have said that. And what did he say? Well, let's go through it. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on Thursday attempted to walk back a comment he made earlier in the week, calling for the elimination of the Electoral College, trying to align himself more closely with Vice President Kamala Harris's position. After Walz said at a fundraiser on Tuesday he believes the Electoral College, quote, needs to go, unquote, which the Harris campaign later said was not an official campaign position, Walz told ABC News in an interview that, quote, my position is the campaign's position, unquote, on the issue. He said he was attempting to, quote, make sure that everybody understands their vote, ... matters, unquote. What? Quote, it's not the campaign's position. And the point I'm trying to make is that there's folks that feel every vote must count in every state. And I think some of folks feel that's not the case, unquote, Walz said in a clip of the interview released Thursday evening. Well, in some states, it is not the case that every vote matters, right? Because if you live in a demonstrably blue state that has been blue for 30 years or something, the likelihood of you voting Republican and it making a difference in the eventual outcome of the electoral contest for that state is probably pretty slim. Right? But if you don't vote, you're not going to change nothing, so vote your conscience, as they say. But just think, Tim, if you would, for a second, about population density in those same states and direct democracy and what that would mean. But of course, that'd be great for you and your party, right? Quote, the point I'm saying is, I'm in 5 states in 2 days. We're out there making the case that the campaign's position is clear, and that's not their position. Their position and my position is to make sure that everybody understands their vote, no matter what state they're in, matters, unquote. Okay, Tim, the concept of understanding is alien to me when I read what you say. Because you don't even know what you're doing. If you want, here's the thing. If Tim Walz actually wanted to eliminate the Electoral College, I would decidedly disagree with him. But if he stuck to that, even in the face of the campaign saying otherwise, and just coming out and saying, well, you know, the vice president and I disagree on some issues, I'd have more respect for him. Rather than just like running away from what he obviously knee-jerk reaction thinks should be the case. I wouldn't agree with him, and I certainly wouldn't want him in a position where he could do anything about it, which he can't, because he would be the president and not the whole of the country. But, yeah. You see, I don't fear anything of Tim Walz wanting the Electoral College to go away, because he can't make it go away. But I just disagree with him. What's more interesting to me is this running away from his own opinion after stating it so stridently. because he got a talking to. He got a talking to. Walz's comment, mark the latest instant. Walz's comment marks. Because it's plural now, because it's anyway. Walz's comment mark. You can only put mark there if comments was plural, but it's not. Anyway, Walz's comment mark the latest instance of the Democratic vice presidential nominee trying to clear up a previous remark made on the campaign trail or from his long career in politics prior to joining the Harris campaign. Let's see, about his military career, about Tiananmen Square. What else? Walz has faced scrutiny for previously misrepresenting his military rank. Yes. Falsely claiming to have carried assault weapons in war. Wrongly insinuating his family conceived using in vitro fertilization. I hadn't heard that one. Wrongly insinuating his family conceived using in vitro fertilization. How do you... What? Oh, that's a new one to me. And incorrectly stating he was in China during the 1989 Tiananmen Square pro-democracy protests. When asked if he and Harris disagree on whether the Electoral College should be eliminated, Walz reiterated that his position on the issue aligns with the campaign's view. Quote, I have spoken about it in the past, and she's been very clear on this, and my position is the campaign's position, he said. Wah wah. The attempted clarification from Walz comes after he told supporters at a closed-door fundraiser at California Governor Gavin Newsom's private residence in Sacramento, California, on Tuesday he believes the national popular vote should determine the winner of the presidential elections rather than the Electoral College, which is decidedly a stupid thing to do. There's a reason the Electoral College was put into place. If Tim Walz does not understand that... Anyway, quote, I think all of us know the Electoral College needs to go. We need national popular vote, but that's not the world we live in. So we need to win Beaver County, Pennsylvania. We need to be able to go to York, Pennsylvania, win. We need to be in western Wisconsin and win. We need to be in Reno, Nevada and win, he said, according to a poll report. Yes, you have to convince Americans all over the country that they should vote for you, and not just in the most populous states, and then give up and ignore everybody else. Yes, Tim, you need to work for people's vote. Heaven forfend that we not make certain states functionally irrelevant simply based on their population. Sovereign states of the United States. The Electoral College is part of that whole United States idea, Tim. But no, I need to travel all these podunk counties. Gosh dang it, I gotta go to York, Pennsylvania and win? I just want to go to San Francisco, where people like me, and I don't need to try too hard. Oh, yeah. Give me a break. A Harris campaign official told CNN on Tuesday, eliminating the Electoral College is not an official campaign position. Yeah, we know. In a statement to CNN on Tuesday, a campaign spokesperson said Walz was, quote, commenting to a crowd of strong supporters about how the campaign is built to win 270 electoral votes. No, he wasn't. No, he was demonstrably not saying that. He was complaining that he has to travel to small population places that he doesn't like to go to, that he actually has to try to work for their vote. That's what he was complaining about. The Electoral College forces him to campaign. That's what he was complaining about. You can't fool me, spokesperson. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the dancy, lovely, smiley, Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow-wee! Wow!
Ooh, that's a Drunken Uncle Dogcat Fox. Drunken Uncle who joined me on my 8th anniversary the other day. And so thanks again to Drunken Uncle. Despite the Harris campaign distancing itself from calls to get rid of the Electoral College, Harris has previously expressed openness to the idea. Oh, that's good. Well, fortunately, she can't make it happen. In a 2019 interview, Harris, who was running for president at the time, said she's open to the discussion around abolishing the Electoral College. The ABC News interview will be released in full Friday morning. I'm glad you're open to the discussion. It's not going to happen. I certainly hope it doesn't happen. I think there'll be plenty of opposition to it. But, yeah, there you go. So Tim Walz, speaking the truth. Like I say, I'll give him credit at least. He was speaking his mind. It's a short-sighted and idiotic position as far as I'm concerned, but he's speaking his mind. And I'd have more respect for him if he didn't capitulate immediately upon being talked to by the campaign. Because if Kamala Harris is open to the discussion, that could have been his answer. And it would have been truthful. You know, I've spoken to Vice President Harris about this, and she's been open to the discussion about the Electoral College. We may disagree, but I think it's a conversation worth having. And I'd be like, sure, it's a conversation worth having, if only to prove the necessity of the Electoral College versus a direct democracy. Sure, I'm open to that. But anyway, that's our second story. Let's see. Evil One. You want another civil war? Then get rid of the Electoral College. Yeah. If you effectively tell certain states in this country that they are irrelevant, that their voice by the math will never matter in a presidential election, then why are they even here? The Electoral College is part of the mechanism that keeps this country together. And again, forces candidates to have to campaign across the country, not to their favorite places. So that entire screed, well, it wasn't a screed, it wasn't written down, but that entire rant by Tim Walz was him complaining about having to campaign in small counties. Small counties that aren't significant to him. Small counties that he wish he could just ignore. Beaver County, Pennsylvania, forget that place, man. You know, anybody in Beaver County, Pennsylvania who was thinking of voting for Tim Walz hears that. Well, I don't know that I want that guy's vice president. I don't know. Kind of a stupid thing to say, Tim. You're telling portions of this country that they don't matter to you. Okay. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out for you. Big Dave 1066. We need to expand the Electoral College to have each district goes and how the district votes to break it up, the red, blue. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Big Dave. Big Dave 1066. Yeah, that would probably be as much of a tough sell as getting rid of the Electoral College itself, but it's an interesting idea. All right, well, let's move on to our next story. So, you may know the name Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi Coates is one of the more successful, up there with like Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo, one of the more successful race and oppression grifters of the last 10 years or so. Was even, at one point, working with J.J. Abrams to write a Black Superman script for a movie. I think that has pretty much gone by the wayside by now. But he also has recently written a new book. And he was being interviewed about this book on CBS. CBS, who is having quite the last week or two between its morning show and 60 Minutes. But we'll get to the 60 Minutes story here in a moment. The fallout at CBS continues. Sherry Redstone, controlling shareholder of CBS's parent company, is unhappy that journalist Tony Dokoupil, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, I apologize if I'm not, Dokoupil was scolded for properly interviewing Ta-Nehisi Coates. Golly, what happened? On Monday, we reported that CBS Morning's co-anchor Tony Dokoupil was admonished by senior executives for failing to meet CBS's, quote, editorial standards, unquote, in an interview with best-selling author Ta-Nehisi Coates about his new book, The Message, which features a one-sided anti-Israel polemic. We also published a recording of part of that October 7th meeting in which CBS bigwigs hung Dokoupil out to dry. I don't know, should I play this? You think I can get away with playing it? I don't know. See, it's almost 10 minutes long. Let's see if I can get this on here. Let me know if you guys can hear this.
Can you guys hear me? Wait, yeah, the volume must be. Well, it's not games. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. Let's check. All right. I think we'll give it one more minute. And all right, it's 9, and we will get started. And we are going to start with Wendy today.
Thanks, Adrienne. Good morning, everyone. So Adrienne and I want to talk through a few things this morning. And I thank you in advance for keeping this meeting, this conversation today confidential.
Confidential, you say? Uh-oh.
Which is, of course, always the expectation. for this meeting, for every editorial meeting. And the fact is, we often use this meeting to share news with you. We want to continue to be able to do that. We want to protect and honor that trust. And I thank you. I thank you for that.
Well, somebody obviously didn't.
Today is, of course, October 7th.
Oh, okay.
It's profoundly emotional. I know it is a somber day for all of us. And it was 1 year ago that innocent lives were taken at a music festival at locations throughout Israel.
Yeah, it was a somber day that was taken advantage of so that somebody could shill his book on your network. But that's, that's not opportunistic at all.
As we reflect on the events of that day, we remember that we were lost. We recognize the deep impact it continues to have on families, on communities, and of course the world.
So we're going to have someone on who has a book they put out that has a decidedly one-sided view of the situation, and any pushback to that idea on this sacred day or near onto is unwanted.
It also marks 1 year of our correspondence, our crews, all of you and all of us doing the difficult job each and every day of covering a highly charged, emotionally demanding story. It is complex, and it requires courageous and candid conversations.
Courageous conversations? Oh my gosh, is Glenn Singleton far behind?
Before I hand it over to Adrian, I want to thank those of you who reached out via emails and calls to have those conversations with me. You shared your experiences, you shared your feedback in terms of our coverage, and I appreciate your willingness to do so.
I just love the fact that this confidential corporate phone call contains buzz phrases that I've become so familiar with over the years. Courageous conversations. Thank you for expressing to me your experiences and your feelings in these courageous conversations.
Please know that my door is always open for those conversations, and more important, I am always open-minded to those conversations.
Are you, though? Because, I don't know what this lady's position is on the interview that we're talking about here, but let's find out.
Adrian and I talked about this quite a bit over the weekend and over the last days, and I know I can confidently speak for her when I say that we're both grateful that CBS News is a place where people can feel and do feel empowered to reach out, to share their thoughts, to share their concerns.
Unless you say something or ask a question of a guest that you decide is unwanted? Okay.
We are both committed to it continuing to be a place that does so. With that, I'll hand it over to Adrian.
Okay.
Thanks, Wendy. For us as journalists.
As journalists? Okay, so remember what, I'm going to back it up a little bit here just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, can I back it up? I can't. Okay. Just remember, so Ta-Nehisi Coates comes on to CBS to pitch his book called The Message, which by any cursory analysis by people is decidedly an anti-Israel type message. Did I just jump the thing backwards again? I meant to start over. And then he had some pushback from the interviewer saying that, and I'm only paraphrasing here because I only saw clips of it a couple of days ago, is that a lot of this reads like the kind of thing an extremist might have in his backpack. So
covering these difficult anniversaries is a delicate responsibility.
What?
It requires empathy.
Okay, hold on. Now the thing is, I'm not even touching anything, and it's just, all right. Just pick a lane. Okay, there you go. I hope this is not too far into what she was saying.
Respect and a commitment to truth. And today, it will undoubtedly be hard and difficult. And I want to acknowledge the emotional weight that it carries, not just for those directly affected, but for all of us reporting. We all feel, and we all have strong feelings.
Get on with it.
We're human beings, with unique lives and experiences that shape the way we view the world.
Get on with it.
And I want to take the time to remind us all of something.
Okay.
when we step into a newsroom and we pick up a microphone or a camera,
Yeah.
and we sit down for an interview,
Yeah.
produce a story, report from a scene, or anchor a show, we need to remember that we are journalists. And as hard as this is, that means we set our personal feelings and beliefs aside.
Okay. A, I think that's functionally impossible. But B, pushing back on somebody who has taken a demonstrably one-sided position on something in an interview about a subject as controversial as this one. Okay, so you think, or at least the implication here is that the interviewer asked the question purely out of an emotional, personal bias situation. Okay. When he's interviewing somebody who has written a book, is the author of a book that puts out a personal viewpoint on something. Okay. JB, thank you so much. Am late getting here, but today was a good day because you didn't have to use your AK. Oh, sorry. Just got puppy back from the vets. Yay. Feels good, man. Good. Yay, puppy. What is your puppy's name? If you want, I don't want you to dox your puppy if you don't want to, but what's puppy's name? I would like to know puppy's name. Thank you, JB, so much. It's very generous of you. And yay for puppy. Everybody in the chat, say yay for puppy or some variant thereof. You can put your own spin on it. It's fine. Yay for JB's puppy. Mocha. Puppy Mocha. Yay, Mocha. Mocha Puppuccino. Yay, Mocha. Hooray, puppy. All right. Glad to hear it, JB. All right, where were we again? Emotional. What's it now?
Our job is to serve our audiences without bias or perceived bias.
I think that, again, is functionally impossible. But again, you're doing an interview of someone who has put forth a perspective on a situation that has decidedly at least two different sides to it. So,
to provide objective news that we know and they know they can trust.
Would I trust an outlet that just lets somebody come on, pitch their book, and ask no questions? Challenge nothing about their perspectives or their conclusions or anything about the book? Just nod, smile, and say, hey, everybody, we're just here as an advertising platform for this guy's book. The end. I don't know. What do you say about that?
You know, the legacy of CBS News is built on a foundation of neutrality. And we owe it to those who came before us, to ourselves and our viewers, to maintain that standard to the best of our ability.
Neutrality? Do you mean neutrality or just like capitulation? Because there's a decided difference.
It's even in our standards and practices handbook that I think may have been around since Cronkite and Lynn. I want to quote a portion of it, so please bear with me.
Where was CBS's neutrality in fact-checking J.D. Vance in the middle of the president or the vice presidential debate? Where is the neutrality? Okay, I don't know if you know this. The Fourth Estate is there to, in some way, shape, or form, keep in check the powers that be when it comes to government or otherwise. In this case, you're interviewing somebody who's putting forth a book about a crisis political situation in the Middle East that has a decidedly biased perspective. And the guy did some pushback. The guy challenged this person to justify his opinions, which is completely reasonable to do under the circumstances, and especially given the timing leading up to October 7th. But now this is a problem. Okay.
A true news organization, one that pledges to report facts rather than opinions and to focus on the way it is without bias, must build and protect its credibility. Our audiences must know they can trust us.
Okay. He asked the guy a question. He pushed back against Ta-Nehisi Coates' I don't know, aura of purity and enlightenment. after spending I think in the course of writing this book, he spent something like 2 weeks or something in the Middle East and formed an opinion. Okay.
Our audience sources must know our sources must know that they can trust us.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing erodes that bond between us, our audiences, our sources, the people we cover, faster than the perception that we have an asteroid.
Okay. How does challenging some guy's position on the Middle East conflict harm your sources? How does that erode trust with your sources? Again, is every guest that comes on to your network just given the red carpet and champagne and never was heard a discouraging word? How exactly... If you're just going to roll over and show your tummy to anybody who shows up, who's a celebrity, and say nothing elsewise about them except nothing but praise and fawning, how much trust does anybody have that you guys aren't just parrots? That you're just not an advertising platform? A news organization, investigative journalism, challenging the powers that be? That's not what you want to be known for? Okay.
Or that we are beholden to anyone or anything other than fairness, accuracy.
You are telling everyone that you are beholden, or you should have been beholden, to Ta-Nehisi Coates without any question or challenge. That's what you're saying now.
And the truth.
The truth, yes.
And that's why we all, as a part of CBS News, and I take this very personally.
Yeah, you're taking it personally. You're letting emotion get in the way, aren't you? Okay, well, tell us now, after 5 minutes of lead-up, what are you talking about?
Must conduct ourselves in ways that avoid raising any questions about our journalistic independence or integrity.
Why not? Why can't questions be raised about your journalistic integrity? Shouldn't you be as beholden to question as anybody else? What?
We will still, I want to be clear, we will still ask tough questions.
Will you? Because this guy asked a tough question. Who decides how tough is too tough? Who decides whether or not that was a bit too harsh? What do you mean? What do you mean by a tough question?
We will still hold people accountable.
Will you? Because it sure sounds like you have every intention to not hold someone accountable, to not ask a tough question, if it's the wrong person to ask a tough question of. J.D. Vance? Sure. Ta-Nehisi Coates? Oh, we could never.
That's part of our job, too.
Oh, okay.
But we will do so objectively. And that means, very plainly, we have to check our bias and opinions at the door.
Oh, check our biases and opinions at the door. Journalists, biases. I read something that rings false. Maybe I should ask this person whether or not what they said was true. Is that a bad thing?
And that applies to every single one of us.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
We are not here to represent any viewpoint. We are here to tell stories. And I say this a lot. We are here to report news without fear or faith.
Without fear, you are coming down on this guy like a ton of bricks for asking a tough question of someone in a climate and within a day or three of a very significant anniversary. Are you even listening to yourself? Again, remember, guys, this is a confidential phone call. This is something they didn't think was going to come out into the public. Okay.
I want to acknowledge there are a lot of times that we do this really well, and then there are times we don't. And there are times we fail our audiences, and we fail each other.
Okay. Is there a point you're going to come to soon about this situation in particular?
We're in one of those times right now.
Okay.
And it's been growing. And now we are at a tipping point.
Okay, tipping point.
Many of you have reached out to express concerns over recent reporting.
Do you want to get specific about that reporting instead of talking about abstracts this whole time?
Specifically about the CBS Morning's Coates interview from last week,
Yeah.
as well as comments made coming out of some of our correspondents reporting. I want to thank every single one who reached out for your honesty, your transparency, and your commitment.
Transparency. By the way, this is a confidential call. We don't want anybody to know that we're totally and absolutely committed to objectivity. Okay. And what were these complaints? I would love to know the substance of these complaints.
So I want to address three things.
Okay.
Number one, after a review of our coverage, including the interview, it's clear there are times we have not met our editorial standards.
In what way have you not met your editorial standards?
Number two, this has been addressed.
How has this been addressed?
And it will continue to be in the future.
In what way? You just extolled the virtue of transparency. What have you done?
And number three, I want to acknowledge and I want to apologize that it's taken this long to have this conversation.
This courageous conversation, I'm sure.
This is a highly charged and complex issue.
Is it?
We all know that.
Oh, okay.
And it was really important for us, for Wendy, for me, to have the conversations, to take the time and the breath and think and then proceed in a calm and measured way.
I don't hear calm in your voice. I hear a quavering anger or fear, something like that. This doesn't really seem to be coming from a place of calm.
And I say that because this goes way beyond one interview, one comment, one story.
Really? Are you sure?
This is about preserving the legacy of neutrality and objectivity that is CBS News.
The guy pushed back on him for taking a total anti-Israel view in his book. He didn't leave a whole lot of room for doubt as to where he was coming from in his book, and so the interviewer didn't leave any room for doubt as to his criticism or question of what the guy's motivations were. And things that Ta-Nehisi Coates has said since then, which I might pull that up later, don't do anything to dispel that.
I take that responsibility very seriously. We want every show and every newsroom to be a place for courageous, robust conversations.
No, you don't. You're coming down on this guy like he did some major crime. You don't want courageous. You don't want robust. You want coddling, apparently.
And discussions. That's a healthy news organization.
Is it?
And by the way, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of those in the days, weeks, and months coming. And I welcome them.
Do you?
And at the same time, I just want us all to remember that we are a news organization. We're larger than one show, one person, and one story.
Well, the way you're reacting to this, you could have fooled me.
And we will do everything we can. I will do everything I can to be better going forward.
What does that mean? How are you currently flawed?
I want to talk about some next steps. Shauna and I are going to be meeting with her team tomorrow.
Okay.
It's just important that you all know that we hear you and that we have an editorial standard here that must be maintained. An
editorial standard you won't define here in this wake of this particular incident? Okay, I don't want to listen to her anymore. It's going to be more nonsense. Anyway, continuing with the story, and this is the free press referring to themselves. Our reporting was picked up everywhere. Even the New York Times had to acknowledge the scoop. And 2 days later, it's still not clear what how do you say his name? Dokupil did wrong other than ask tough but substantive questions. Substantive? Did somebody say substantive? In our world, we call that journalism. But the fallout over the sin of Dokupil's questions continued on Tuesday morning during a meeting for the morning show staff. Originally, CBS News had invited a self-described mental health expert, DEI strategist, and trauma trainer named Dr. Donald Grant. That sounds like the secret identity of Thor after a fashion. Dr. Donald Grant to moderate a conversation on the issue in an all-staff meeting on Tuesday. So wait a second. Wait a second. So, Ta-Nehisi Coates comes on to shill his book. All right. The interviewer pushes back on his, enlightened perspective about the conflict between Israel and Hamas by saying that this reads like something that an extremist would have in his backpack. And I'm paraphrasing. And as a result of that, you need to bring in a mental health expert, DEI strategist, and trauma trainer to deal with the, psychological fallout of the staff? How thinly skinned is everybody at CBS? Good gravy. That plan was scrapped after old social media posts from Dr. Grant surfaced, including one where he referred to South Carolina Senator Tim Scott as Uncle Tim, a reference to Uncle Tom, and another of him describing a possible second Trump term as magicide and the death of a nation. Seems like just the guy you should call when you want to smooth things over. The meeting went ahead without Grant. Staffers were not able to join from outside of CBS offices in order to prevent leaks. One source familiar with the proceedings suggested it was a quote-unquote shit show. You mean like the TEDx I did this week? With various employees yelling. Shauna Thomas, the show's executive producer, was in tears. So was Dokapil. There was an open debate in the meeting about whether it is, quote, fair to talk about whether Israel should exist at all, unquote. There are some people at CBS who think that, quote, Israel's existence as a state should be part of fair conversation, unquote, said one CBS source. This is the author talking here, because this is definitely a quasi-article editorial. The author says, can you imagine journalists having that conversation about any other country? No wonder Sherry Redstone, the controlling shareholder of CBS's parent company Paramount Global, at least until its merger with Skydance goes through sometime next year, is not happy. A source close to Redstone told the Free Press that Redstone thought that Tony, quote, gave a great interview and modeled what civil discourse should look like, and she disagreed with the action the company took. She's working with the CEOs to address this issue, unquote. Meanwhile, Coates himself spoke about the controversy for the first time Tuesday. In a trailer for an appearance on Trevor Noah's podcast, he accused Dokapil of, quote, commandeering, unquote, the interview. Quote, I don't think he did Nate and Gail a service, and I'm really, really sorry for them, unquote, said Coates, referring to Dokapil's co-host Gail King and Nate Burleson. But Coates also revealed a detail that caught our eye. As he was praising Gail King, as a, quote, great journalist and great interviewer, he said that, quote, Gail came behind the stage before we went on, and she had gone through the book. And I'm not saying she agreed with the book. She was like, I'm going to ask you about this, I'm going to ask you about that, unquote. Back to the author here. So let's get this straight. One journalist is raked over the coals for asking tough questions, while another journalist, if Coates' recollection is correct, previews her questions and faces no repercussions. King did not respond to a request for comment, which poses a few questions. Chief among them, are there different rules for different journalists at CBS? A former CBS journalist told the Free Press that, quote, if she was showing him specific lines of questioning in advance, that would violate journalistic standards. Now, are they going to investigate her and say that what she did was not in keeping with CBS standards? I suspect not, unquote. One last thing. Let's just say that we have a pattern recognition around stories like these. So when two sources at CBS told the Free Press that this whole dust-up involved the network's, quote, race and culture unit, unquote, we weren't shocked. Yes, a tough question was asked of a non-white person, therefore racism. According to the company's website, this unit works, quote, in concert with the CBS News Standards and Ethics Department to ensure all stories have the proper context, tone, and intention. It was formed in the summer of 2020. Well, surprise, surprise, surprise. I wonder what started that. Quote, "We must always be aware of how race and culture impacts our journalism, and, in terms of the future of CBS News, this unit will be as important as standards and practices." As important as standards and practices. The race and culture unit. You know, I don't know. There's something about that name and its prominence that makes me feel like it's hearkening back to a different era in a different country somewhere. I won't get more specific. Use your imaginations. Quote, "These broad and subjective criteria have made them a very powerful voice, and many employees believe this has allowed greater bias to creep into editorial decisions at the network," said one CBS News source to the Free Press. Quote, "You see bias when it's something you don't agree with," unquote. Yeah. Anything anyone says that is opposite to my perspective is obviously racist, sexist, whatever else. That's something else. That is cray-cray. But okay, there you go. Ooh, CBS, not having a good time. Not having a good time. And in that same vein, let's talk a little more about CBS in a different context. Let's talk about that Kamala Harris interview. That Kamala Harris interview where the interviewer actually did a really good job in places, really pushing back on her and holding her feet to the fire on some issues. And yet, even though that 60 Minutes interview was very enlightening, there is controversy. Ex-CBS staffers call for outside probe of 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris amid editing scandal. Oh boy, what was edited? Former CBS News staffers are demanding an independent investigation into 60 Minutes over the brewing Kamala Harris interview scandal, even as the network digs in its heels and refuses to release the full, unedited transcript, the Post has learned. The long-running news show has come under fire after allegedly cleaning up the Democratic presidential candidate's answer to a question from 60 Minutes correspondent Bill Whitaker about Israel that aired during a special episode on Monday. 60 Minutes and CBS seem to have a real problem when it comes to questions surrounding Israel. It's amazing, isn't it? Her reply was starkly different from the word salad the vice president served up in a clip to promote the interview shown by Face the Nation the day before. The controversy has prompted media insiders and critics, including Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, to question the ethical standards at the Tiffany network. Quote, "I think there should be an outside investigation," unquote, one former CBS News journalist told the Post on Thursday. Quote, "Obviously there's a problem here. If they care about journalistic integrity, they would conduct an investigation or release the full transcript." A second CBS source said the discrepancy in the answers makes it seem that the network's flagship show is biased. Quote, "Their credibility has been called into question and their impartiality has been called into question," the source said. Quote, "Don't you need a full-throated review of what went wrong?" Unquote. On Thursday, CBS again declined multiple requests from the Post to release the full transcript. The network did not comment on whether it planned on launching a probe into the matter. However, CBS has a history of both releasing full transcripts of its news programs and launching probes. In 2013, the network investigated a 60-minute segment by correspondent Laura Logan about a terror attack on the U.S. compound in Benghazi that left Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans dead. The probe, led by then Executive Director of Standards and Practices Al Ortiz, discredited the reporting, finding it, quote, "deficient in several aspects," unquote. Logan and her producer were asked to take a leave of absence. Two sources suggested CBS tap Ortiz, that's one way of putting it, who retired in 2022 after 43 years of the network, to conduct an outside review of the Harris interview. Ortiz did not respond to requests for comment. CBS has also released full transcripts in the past. It published Catherine Herridge's 2020 interview with Trump, as well as Jan Crawford's 2019 interview with then Attorney General Bill Barr. Earlier this year, 60 Minutes provided Bloomberg News with a full transcript of its interview with Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. Releasing a full transcript would provide clarity about where Harris's answer came from, but it also may raise more questions about the impartiality of 60 Minutes. Other networks also publish full transcripts of high-profile interviews that are unedited, such as ABC News' interview with President Biden in July and CNN's sit-down with Harris and her running mate Tim Walz in August. At issue for CBS are two clips that have circulated on social media side by side showing a discrepancy in Harris's answers to the same question. In the Face the Nation clip, again, the Face the Nation clip was a promotional clip for the oncoming interview. In the Face the Nation clip, a wide shot reveals Whitaker asking Harris about Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Quote, but it seems that Prime Minister... let me try that again. Quote, but it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening, unquote, he says. Harris replies, quote, well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region, unquote. Which is a bunch of gobbledygook. On 60 Minutes, the camera zoomed in on Whitaker, who asked the same question. Harris's response was different. Quote, we are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end, unquote. A network insider said it is the same shot of Whitaker, just a tighter focus on the correspondent's face. So they probably took the same shot and just sort of digitally zoomed in on his face. The insider did not know why 60 Minutes aired a tight shot of Whitaker. Quote, why is the answer to the same question so different? The former CBS News staffer asked. Quote, this needs to be answered. Was this answer the continuation of a longer answer, or was it an answer that came much later in the interview? Unquote. Former CBS journalist said it is possible that there was a miscommunication between the show and the department that edits promotions as 60 Minutes was editing the show when the promo went out. In a best-case scenario, Harris's answer to 60 Minutes may have come shortly after the wordy answer she gave in the Face the Nation clip. They said if her answer was part of an extended answer to the same question, then no journalistic malpractice was committed. But of course, how can we know that without the full context? But if the answer came from another question about Israel and was made to look like an answer to Whitaker's question, then it's ethically problematic. Quote, 60 Minutes holds itself to the highest journalistic standards, the former CBS staffer said. Quote, releasing the transcript would answer everyone's questions and it would allow them to stand behind the integrity of the story they broadcast, unquote. Quote, the stakes are too high. It's a presidential election. Trump is asking for the transcript and journalists are asking for answers, unquote, the source concluded. The discrepancy in the clips has caused the internet to spin theories that 60 Minutes took an answer from another part of the interview and doctored it to look like an answer to Whitaker's question in order for Harris to look better. It is also unclear if Harris was allowed to answer the same question in another take. You know, if I was a suspicious person, and I am about these things, the reason that they zoomed in on Whitaker and sort of effectively cropped out Kamala Harris from the shot is to make the continuity between the question and the answer not look awkward, right? Because she could have been in a different body position by the time the answer that they aired was versus the answer that she gave and that kind of thing. I see that lots when I'm looking at TEDx's sometimes. You'll see somebody talking and suddenly there'll be a cut and the speaker will be in a completely different position on the stage or have their arms in a completely different position, and you'll know that something was edited out. So by zooming in and cropping out Kamala, they could pretend that what she said was a direct answer to the question asked. That's my suspicion. That's only my suspicion. Sources close to the network have said the interview was edited for time constraints and clarity, but that still doesn't answer the larger question of where Harris's response came from and why it was edited in that way. The source added that, quote, Face the Nation, unquote, had a longer version of the exchange on 60 Minutes and that it was a normal edit. Well, then just release the full transcript. Just release the full thing. Quote, it is normal practice for every television broadcast to edit for time, offered a television news insider. Quote, there is no deceit, unquote. Then release the full transcript. The Harris campaign distanced itself from CBS's editing snafu on Wednesday evening amid speculation from sources that there may have been pressure from the vice president's team to run a more succinct, stronger answer. Okay, well, if any of that is true, that has all other sorts of implications. Quote, we do not control CBS's production decisions and refer questions to CBS, an aide for the Harris campaign told Variety. In recent days, Trump accused CBS of election interference, posting on Truth Social Tuesday, quote, a giant fake news scam by CBS in 60 Minutes. Her real answer was crazy or dumb, so they actually replaced it with another answer in order to save her or at least make her look better, unquote. He continued, quote, a fake news scam, which is totally illegal. I don't know about that, but take away the CBS license, election interference, unquote. On Thursday, Federal Communications Commissioner Chair Jessica Rosenworcel pushed back on Trump's attacks on the broadcast station. She called his demand to strip CBS of its license, quote, threats against free speech that should not be ignored, unquote. Then release the full transcript. I mean, somebody here is being censorious. It sure looks like it's CBS. But there you go, I suppose. Mr. Tickletrunk, I'd say editing out her rambling and swapping questions and answers at election interference. I don't know if it's legally so, but it is certainly rampant collusion propaganda if it is the case. Or if the campaign itself did not instruct CBS to do so, CBS taking that stance on behalf of a particular presidential candidate, that doesn't look good. To put it mildly, to put the British art of understatement on it. T.R. Alexander, yeah, release the Snyder cut. I mean the transcript. Well, you know. Release the Harris cut. Release the Harris cut. Let's see. Advocatus, even if they cut half the answer, it would still be a problem given the scope of the interview. Yeah. Just release the transcript. Purportedly, this lady wants to be president of the United States. What she intends to do or her perspective on world leaders or situations is vital, presumably, to people being able to make an informed decision about who they want to run the country, especially given the crises we find ourselves in. So, release the full transcript. Why wouldn't you do that? We just listened to an absolute tirade from insider CBS executives talking about, their integrity, their journalistic integrity, and we have to do this unbiased, da-da-da-da-da. Then release the transcript. You've done it before. It's not a heavy lift. Just do it. You know, it's the Streisand effect to the nth degree, especially under these circumstances. If you're not releasing the full transcript, the questions as to why are going to overwhelm the value of the actual interview eventually. Right? If you have some implication of collusion between a media outlet, a major media outlet, and one presidential campaign, you know, Fox News gets that stuff all the time, and in some cases, rightly so. CBS, do you want to be the Fox News of the Democratic Party? Maybe you do. Maybe that's where the money is. I don't know. It's so bizarre. So bizarre. Let's see. Mr. Tickletrunk, pay me no mind, Blight. I'm just a dumb Canadian who doesn't know U.S. law. Well, but here's the thing, Mr. Tickletrunk. We, as in the United States, we live, I hear, in a free country. You can speak your mind, right? Unless you're Kamala Harris, in which CBS will, clean up your mind for you, apparently. And as far as a dumb Canadian, there's no such thing as a dumb Canadian. There's just a such thing as an impolite Canadian, which is a rarity, as far as I understand it. Peter Nakaj. Hello. Did I say that correctly? Nakaj? Let me know. Give me phonetics in the chat. I was just, as I've said before, from time to time, YouTube recommends to me my own material, and it recommended to me a TEDx from, I don't know how long ago back now. It was a lady talking about Starbucks names, talking about being offended that someone got her name wrong on a Starbucks cup, and this led to some larger conversation about, culturally appropriate names and all these other things. And so I was listening to myself obviously talk to this lady rhetorically about the thing, and so it reminded me when I see a name I don't understand, or not understand, I don't know how to say correctly. My first instinct is, well, I want to understand. I want to be able to say it correctly, and I give it a shot. I give it my first best shot, being a dumb gringo, and but at the same time, it's like, did I get it right? Was I close? Let me know. I want to learn. I want to make people feel comfortable and welcome, not alienated. I'm trying to understand. And speaking of alienation, not the classic sci-fi movie of the 80s, but instead, New York City rents 150 hotels. Okay, just let's take this slow, shall we? 150 hotels at $352 per room each night to house illegal immigrants through 2025. Okay, now I don't know how many rooms we're talking here, but just imagine that. $352 per night between now and the end of 2025. Over 150 hotels are being rented out to house illegal immigrants in New York City, with rooms being rented out by the city for over $350 a night for those foreign nationals who have come to the city. This comes as the border as well as immigration have been a top concern for Americans going into the last month of the election. According to the Daily Mail, New York City has warned that around 14,000 hotel rooms 14,000 hotel rooms will be needed until next year for illegal immigrants being housed. The total cost is expected to reach a staggering $5.76 billion. That's billion with a B. $5.76 billion. Since 2022, over 200,000 foreign nationals who have come into the U.S. have arrived in New York City. Many have been bussed in from other parts of the country by GOP governors in the southern parts of the U.S., letting some of the blue states know the consequences of mass illegal immigration. Over 150 hotels are being used at the average cost of $352 a night per room. Nicole Galenas of the Manhattan Institute think tank said, quote, "We should stop using hotels as shelters by the end of the year," unquote, and emphasized that taxpayers will not be able to foot the bill for illegal immigrants housing indefinitely. No kidding. The cost has come to light as the city has announced its desire to have thousands more rooms available going forward. Thousands more. Quote, "The New York City Department of Homeless Services is seeking to continue the city's sanctuary facility program by procuring a vendor who can assist in acquiring the use of large-scale commercial hotels and hotel management services to help address the current emergency," unquote, the Department of Homeless Services announced. Watch the tourism trade in New York drop like a rock in the intervening time. That's just me talking here. Some of New York City's most iconic hotels, with 22 of them being in Midtown Manhattan, have been turned into illegal immigrant shelters. The 4-star Row New York City Hotel in Times Square, as well as the Roosevelt in the area of Grand Central, have both been made to be used as shelters. Hotel owners have been warning city officials about the consequences to the economy if there is a shortage of housing for tourists who help keep up business in the city that never sleeps. $5.76 billion of New Yorker taxpayer money, and probably a whole bunch of government subsidies as well. It's $5.76 billion. And effectively just removing the tourist trade in downtown Manhattan for the foreseeable future. That's nuts. That is a mixed bag of nuts right there. But hey, and at the same time, the mayor of New York is in deep, deep trouble. He's probably going to have to resign sooner or later. Yeah. But you don't hear about this in the mainstream news right now, right? You don't see this as a headline. $5.76 billion of New York taxpayer money is going to have to go out to deal with the illegal immigrant population that New York is having to share as part of a sharing the pain effort after years and years of rampant illegal immigration and open border policies. Only now, within the last month or so, has Biden actually enacted restrictions that might tend to curtail some of the ongoing damage, but that doesn't cure what's already occurred. And it puts the lie to his claim earlier that he was unable to act unless Congress passes a bill. Now, he's been able to act the entire time. You talk about Donald Trump making a phone call and knocking off the immigration bill. It was unnecessary to take actions. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I say, I am no fan of executive action when Congress should be the one acting. I'm no fan of it. But in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of an emergency, especially one that was self-generated by Biden in the first place, by his promises on the campaign trail and his initial policies coming into office, he had every ability to try to curtail it earlier on in the last 3.5 years, but only now that it becomes political pressure because of the presidential campaign. Now suddenly he has the power to restrict border entries. Oh my gosh, where did he find these magical powers? Anyway, I could go on, but we are at the 90-minute mark, and that's where I like to try to keep these shows, because my voice usually doesn't last more than about 2 hours, as I learned on my 8th anniversary stream. I have a stamina. I have a stamina bar. And my stamina bar goes about 2 hours on any particular stream. Even if I'm not talking all that much, I have to move. I get sort of like spatially claustrophobic if I'm sitting in a chair for too long. I got to get up and do something else for a while. And that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go, what am I going to do? Grocery shopping maybe? Something else? I don't know. But before I go, some more things here. Some emulation. You are my shun sign, my only shun sign. You make me happy when skies are gray. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. So please don't take my sunshine away. Let's see. Matt. It may cost a butt. You get Rat Street barbecue in return. It may cost a butt. I don't know. Are we an Argentinian soccer team by any chance? Oh, if you get that reference, boy, oh boy. Boy, oh boy. Evil One, great show scribe. Thank you, Evil One. Appreciate it. Who let Meatwad in? See, I don't even know what you guys are talking about half the time because, like, you know, these are conversations that are going on further up the chat. And I just don't know. Oh, are you talking about my voice? See, I don't even know. I know that's a reference to... What was it? Aqua Teen Hunger Force? I've never watched an episode of that show. I don't even know. I mean, I know the reference, but I've never watched a single episode. I see clips. People use clips of those characters on their videos all the time. That's about as much as I know. But elsewise, Scribe sounds more like Kermit the Frog's... well, either Kermit the Frog's cousin or Jordan Peterson, I've been told a couple of times. You know. Hello, Kermit the Frog here. Oh, Piggy! Stop being so angry. Yeah, if I really push it. Push it. Push it real good. Anyway. And Kiro Soldier, Scriblade, do you by chance listen to power metal or symphonic metal? And it was a great stream as always. Well, thank you, Kiro Soldier. Not as a matter of course, but I don't mind it so much. Like, just as a quick example, my music tastes when I was growing up were, they went this wise. I liked Dave Matthews Band, Under the Table and Dreaming. I was the first person in my social group to buy Tool's Undertow, mainly because of the Sober music video, and I love old school Tool and Perfect Circle, at least the first album or so. Alice in Chains. What else? I mean, I've got if you looked at my CD collection, and yes, I have a CD collection. How old am I? It's like talking about 8-track tapes or something. I have a whole bunch of stuff that ranges all over the place. Power metal in particular, no, but I do like some of it. There's a great channel on YouTube called Drumeo. Have you guys heard of Drumeo? They have this... I love it. They have this great thing where they bring in drummers who are from specific genres of music and then challenge them to come up with their own drum track to a song completely outside their wheelhouse that they've removed the drum track to. They have to come up with their own drum track to a particular song. And so they bring in, like, the lead drummer from Megadeth to come up with a drum track for a song from The Killers. Stuff like that. Or somebody who was like Dua Lipa's drummer, and then she has to do a drum track to Slipknot. It's amazing. It's amazing what they come up with. And oftentimes they'll do something really extreme, like give somebody some really heavy-hitting metal that they have absolutely no experience with, and they have to come up with something. And I appreciate that a little bit. But anyway, I'm going off on tangents here. Either way. Oh, yeah, the Chad Smith on drums. Yeah, Chad Smith doing 30 Seconds to Mars. if you want to see musical genius at work, somebody coming in completely blank, without any preparation whatsoever, listens to about 30 seconds of a song, and then just goes with it, and then compare that to the original track. Hard to tell the difference in a lot of ways, and might even improve upon it, depending. It's amazing. But anyway, guys, I'm going off on different places. So tomorrow night at, let me make sure I get the time right here, because he did give me the time, and I want to make sure I get this right. Let's see, did he give me the time? Okay, so 7 p.m. Pacific time. That's going to be 10 p.m. Eastern. Monday night, I'll be on the Latino Slant channel. And apparently we're going to be discussing a sort of docu-dramedy that was just released on Mexican television that covers the creation of the Spanish Dracula from the 30s. Because they filmed two different Draculas at the same time. One with Bela Lugosi and one with a Spanish actor whose name I suddenly forget, using the same costume, same sets and everything. And there's currently a docu-dramedy out talking about that story. And so I just watched the first episode of that docu-dramedy, and apparently we're going to be talking about that tomorrow night. So that's 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern on Latino Slant on YouTube. And then Tuesday, unless something else comes up, Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on Midnight's Edge After Dark. I should be once again a panelist on there to talk about whatever's going on in entertainment and movies and comic books and who knows what else. It's always very eclectic. JB, thank you so much. If you like if you like metal, check out Pantera. They are great, but holy shit, what a tragic end to the band. R.I.P. Dimebag Darrell. I actually have some Pantera on soundtracks. I don't know that I have a Pantera album specifically, but like I've got the Crow soundtrack from way back when. Pantera's on there. The Badge, I think, was the song on there. I'm pulling from my memory. Some other things here and there. But yeah. And thank you, Kiefer Dan, for putting up the link to Latino Slant. Appreciate it. Yes, Polly and I have become fast friends since discussing the Menendez trial. We'll hopefully be doing that sometime this week, too. I'm not quite sure. I got to get the scheduling for our follow-up to the Menendez story with Misery Machine and Polly and hopefully Romy, his wife, from Latino Slant. Also, did you know, I don't know if you knew this, did you know that I have a Discord server? I have a Discord server. Would you like to join the Discord server? Well, let me tell you about the Discord server, as I totally prepared a link for it before the show started. Anyway, there's a link to the Discord server in the chat right now. If you'd like to join the Discord server, click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you're not a bot, have actually watched the stream, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's Discord server secret word is integrity. Yes, just say hello, integrity, and I'll know that you watched the show. As always, you can find me here Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for TED Excellence, where I'll go over another off-brand TED Talk. Hopefully something that's a bit cleaner than last time. You know what I mean if you were there for it. And, the Sunday stream always, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on this channel. And I think that's it. Leave a like on the way out if you would. Comment if you can. Share this out if you want. There's a merch store. Anything else I'm forgetting? I don't know. Either way, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, link at the top of the chat box. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Everyone, hope you have a good rest of your Sunday, weekend as well. Hope the week ahead of you is calm and eventful and fruitful. And I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.